Hi and welcome to the second part of GlassFish a la carte. In part 1, I installed GlassFish v3 starting from a small 5 megabyte bootstrap code. In this demo, I'll be adding an additional set of modules to actually do something other than just start the domains. So I'm adding a web container. I'm using here the admin tool, the graphical tool. There's also obviously a command line interface to doing the exact same thing. So I'm adding those components, including the dependencies, agreeing to the various licenses if there's more than one. And that's it. We have GlassFish installed with those additional containers. So what I can now do is start the domain and actually deploy something. And that something is a web application, which can now be deployed since I have a web container installed. I can open this URL where the application actually sits. Nothing really fancy at this point. Now, the next thing I'm doing here is looking at some OSGi bundles and showing how GlassFish v3 deals with them. Here I have a very simple service definition and some OSGi metadata in the manifest to express the API that's being exported. This is the implementation. I have two implementations. Both implement this simple service API, and both are described here. Oh, and by the way, these are Spring Beans. Are described here in the simple services XML and the equivalent OSGi config file. And obviously in the manifest, I import the package, which is the API, and export the implementation. What I'm doing here is actually adding a repository, which happens to be a local one, and this is what we call an IPS repository, image packaging system. And this is where I have an additional container that is being made available. And in that case, this is a Spring OSGi unmodified container. So if I go to the HTTP interface, I can actually see that Spring Dynamic Module container available. And when I use the update graphical tool, I can select this one and install it. And it's worth about 2.5 megabytes. So agree to the license, accept, and this is now actually being available as an extension to GlassFish. And we haven't used obviously any GlassFish API for extending GlassFish, purely a Spring unmodified OSGi set of bundles. So what I can do at this point is deploy the specific type, which we call OSGi, the API definition. Oh, and first I need the OSGi extender, which is a bundle which is activated and which will actually look at everything that's deployed, and if it is a Spring, it requires a Spring container, actually use that. Here in the Felix admin console, you can see that this is actually activated, the Spring OSGi extender. So now I can actually deploy the definition of the service, and this being an OSGi bundle. So target simple service API.jar. I can deploy obviously the implementation as well, which are the two Spring Beans which I briefly described. And now to show you how we can actually make use of that, let's look at a simple servlet, which happens to be here a Servlet 3.0, which uses this add web servlet annotation, and see how we simply use the standard add resource annotation and refer to a given service by its name. And at this point, we can just, by making sure the injected service is not null, simply invoke that service. So without using any Spring API or any GlassFish API for that matter. So that web app, that servlet is in a web app which is deployed as any other web app in GlassFish. And now I can open the URL where that servlet actually lives and see that the two services are actually being injected and invoked by the servlet. So this concludes part 2 of GlassFish a la carte, showing how you can add on the fly different containers and make use of them.